Well, good evening, friends. Rob has asked me to say something relevant to the Middle East on the 250th anniversary of American independence, and it is an honor to do so. And as a historian by training, I'll attempt this with a very brief history lesson. And by the way, there are a dozen of our Washington Institute Pepperdine students in the audience. For you, this is a refresher. Now, it's a custom in America, when in doubt, to wonder what would the founders do. Now, often we don't have much to go on. But in the present predicament, we do. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died 2 centuries ago this Independence Day. They died on the same day, July 4th, 1826. But they were in a spot comparable in some ways to ours. Now, if you went out on Hollywood Boulevard with a camera and a mic, asking passersby what the phrase "the shores of Tripoli" refers to, well, you can imagine the results. But to the first American citizens, it was as familiar as the Strait of Hormuz is today. The shores of Tripoli were akin to a choke point, held by America's enemies, and everyone from Washington to Jefferson to Adams pondered how to open it up. Now, the new United States lived by seafaring trade. Its merchant marine found the Mediterranean trade especially profitable, but also perilous. Perilous because the southern shore, the so-called Barbary Coast, was controlled by Muslim-ruled states that sponsored corsairing. They took foreign ships, cargoes, and crews as booty or for ransom, and captured Christians could be enslaved. If a European state wished immunity for its merchant fleets, it had to pay an annual tribute or send in warships to defend them, and often it was just cheaper to pay. Now, the new United States lacked a navy, so it had to pay up. But the founders chafed, and no wonder, about 20% of federal revenues went to pay the Barbary tributes. President Washington wrote this to his French friend Lafayette in 1786. "In such an enlightened, in such a liberal age, how is it possible the great maritime powers of Europe should submit to pay an annual tribute to the little piratical states of Barbary? Would to heaven we had a navy able to reform those enemies to mankind or crush them into non-existence." Now, crush them into non-existence may fall short of Trump's "a whole civilization will die tonight," but not by much. The same year, Adams and Jefferson exchanged views on the problem. Adams wrote, "Perhaps you will say fight them, though it should cost us a great sum to carry on the war, and although at the end of it we might still have more money to pay as presents. This is not good economy. It is wisest for us to negotiate and pay the necessary sum." Jefferson disagreed. "I very early thought it would be best to effect a peace through the medium of war. If it be admitted that war is still exposed to uncertainties, I weigh against this the greater uncertainty of the duration of a peace bought with money." So, of course, Adams followed Washington. Jefferson followed Adams as president in 1800, by which time the United States had built a navy of heavy frigates. And you can still see the last surviving one. It's the USS Constitution, which is in Boston. When the Pasha of Tripoli, which is in Libya today, demanded a hefty raise in 1801, Jefferson decided to send a fleet to compel his submission. The strategy included blockading and bombarding Tripoli and escorting U.S. merchant ships. Now, of course, like all wars, this one was unpredictable and costly. Tripoli held out, The low point came in 1803 when an American frigate ran aground and the enemy captured 300 officers and crew. Now, what broke the deadlock was a daring mission undertaken by a former U.S. consul who assembled a small force of Marines and mercenaries in Egypt and marched overland from the east westwards toward Tripoli. His idea was regime change. Right? Depose the Pasha of Tripoli and replace him with his exiled brother. So the Marines seized a provincial town along the road to Tripoli and raised the American flag on foreign soil for the first time. And that's where the Shores of Tripoli originates in the Marine Corps hymn. And that's where Jefferson pulled the plug on regime change. Jefferson was wary about a quagmire before a quagmire became a thing. As he informed Congress, we certainly had never contemplated, nor were we prepared to land an army of our own or to raise, pay, or subsist an army of Arabs to march to Tripoli and to carry on a land war at such a distance from our resources. Our means and our authority were merely naval. So there would be no regime change. But by leveraging the threat of it, the U.S. negotiated a peace treaty with the Pasha. No more annual tribute, no more assaults on American ships, but the U.S. would pay a one-time ransom to release those American sailors after 2 years of captivity. So the 1805 treaty ended the war, but the deal also became a source of political contention back home. In 1806, a Senate committee released a report calling it an inglorious deed. So the definition of victory is always contentious. Now, is there anything to be learned here? Well, the past is a very different place, but it may offer insights. First, a successful outcome requires some credible threat of force. The 49 volumes of the papers of Thomas Jefferson offer no equivalent to "Open the effing straits, you crazy bastards." Or you'll be living in hell. But it's implicit, and the founders understood full well that there was no substitute for threatening the use of force. Another lesson was that the U.S. wouldn't always have the timely support of allies. Now, Barbary corsairing was a problem for nearly all of Europe. And in the 1780s, when Jefferson, when he was in Paris, pushed for a joint effort. But when the crunch came for the U.S., Europe was deep in the Napoleonic Wars. European states allowed U.S. ships to make port calls, but wouldn't lend a ship of their own. So the United States would need the independent capability to defend itself. So force, yes. But there's another complementary lesson. The slogan of the time was "millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute." The founders did spend millions on defense, but they weren't averse to deal-making if it saved both face and resources. So tribute, no. The odd ransom payment, perhaps. We would call that diplomacy. A final lesson should be that these wars take time. Maritime predation was a centuries-old system in the Mediterranean, and it wasn't going to be eliminated in a quick campaign. The war against Tripoli lasted 4 years, from 1801 to 1805. Only one virtue matches decisiveness in war: it's patience. So I conclude. We're being bombarded with analogies these days. This war's like Gallipoli. No, it's like Suez. Oh no, it's the Gulf of Tonkin. And I'm sure there's something to be learned from all of them. But in this 250th year, perhaps we should look first to the founders. After all, they did get most things right. And one of them was they opened the damn strait. So happy anniversary to the Stars and Stripes. Long may they wave.